What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Week 14, last week before the fantasy playoffs, so obviously a very important week for many of you, and we actually do have some options on free agency this week depending on your league size. Two biggest names are very likely rostered in most competitive leagues, but I wanted to mention them just in case. Keaton Mitchell and Ezekiel Elliott. Mitchell, of course, took over as the lead running back before their bye last week, so maybe some people dropped him, maybe some people didn't want to add him because they're on bye, so definitely go after him if you can. And then Stevenson is expected to miss, I would say, about a month. Definitely possible he's just done for the rest of the season since they have obviously nothing to play for and everything to play against to not win games right now. He's got the high ankle sprain. He's not going to be playing, so Zeke's going to be the lead back, going to be close to a feature back rest of season. Doesn't mean he's going to be great, right? I mean, they just scored, their third straight game under 10 points. They didn't score anything last week, but he's going to be like a running back 2 probably in any games that Stevenson misses. Whenever that's on free agency, have to go over that. Again, they're probably both rostered, but had to mention them. I would spend the majority of your remaining fab to get either one of them because both have a chance to be actual starting running back options in the fantasy playoffs. Other running backs that have benefited from injury this week are Kenneth Gainwell, Antonio Gibson, and Chris Rodriguez. They're obviously a lot less valuable because, I mean, we don't even know if Swift is going to miss any time, and then the Commanders are on bye this week, one of only 2 teams on bye in week 14. So even if Brian Robinson's injured his hamstring, is a little bit more major, he might not actually end up missing time, or maybe he only misses one game because they have that bye. So obviously it would be much more appealing for Gibson, for Chris Rodriguez if they weren't on bye this week, but we definitely have to go over them. I definitely wouldn't spend like a lot going after any of them, but Gainwell is definitely worth stashing because if Swift is out, he's going to have not a very large early down role, basically no role in the red zone for rushing, just because every time they get within like the 5-yard line, Hurts is just going to take that. So there's very little touchdown upside for Gainwell, but if he's going to mix in for what? I mean, if Swift misses maybe like 10 to 12 carries, he's going to have like 5 or 6 targets. He's going to be someone that in full PPR formats, you could definitely consider starting. That should be rostered. And then again, going back to Antonio Gibson, Chris Rodriguez, if we were to get Brian Robinson missing week 15, both of them would be viable options. It would definitely be more Antonio Gibson, but who knows? I mean, the Commanders obviously aren't in it right now. They're very high on Chris Rodriguez, a lot higher than basically every other team was in the pre-draft process. They've talked about him being like a 3rd-round pick for them, like when they graded it out. I don't necessarily agree with their analysis on him, but I'll say I've been sitting on him in my Dynasty League just because, maybe there is a chance that over the final few games of the season, they're like, you know what? We've got Brian Robinson now injured. We know what we have in Gibson. Let's just see what we have in Chris Rodriguez. Let's give him 10 to 15 touches each week. All would pretty much come on the ground. And again, I don't think any of us are really actually starting him in fantasy, but worth mentioning, I think in deeper formats, if you're looking for someone to stash, he's an option. After those running backs, it's pretty much just all handcuffs who didn't necessarily benefit this week from injury, but who always could. We obviously saw Derrick Henry go down last week. Looks like he's going to be fine. Looks like he's going to play. But we almost had Tyjae Spears hit. We had Charbonnet hit recently with Ken Walker going down. Mitchell hit, taking over for Gus Edwards. Zeke hit, taking over for Stevenson. And so all of these players we've been talking about, it's like almost like every week you just start crossing one off the list because it happens, right? Running back is a very dangerous position in the NFL. They get injured at a pretty high rate. So if you're going to be stashing something, running back would be my priority. I don't really care about stashing, extra bench wide receivers. If you've got, 4 or 5 wide receivers you feel good about, what's the point of rostering your 6th and 7th wide receivers you're never going to start, or that like backup quarterback you're not going to start, backup tight end? Like at this point, you kind of have your playoff roster figured out with like a few pieces you could filter in and out of the flex. And so everyone else, I would just want that to be upside. And right now upside is running backs, because running backs could pretty easily see one injury. All of a sudden, you're a starting option. You don't see that as much at wide receiver. So my order for rostering these handcuffs is Tyjae Spears at the top, Rico Dowdle, Elijah Mitchell, Leonard Fournette. Chase Brown used to be Travion Williams, but it looks like Chase Brown overtook Williams as that number 2, and he looked really good on Monday night, so I would say him over Williams. Then Zamir White, Ty Chandler, and honestly, I would say Chris Rodriguez probably goes to the bottom of this list. I wanted to mention him with Antonio Gibson, but I mean, again, let's be honest, I think in most leagues, we probably don't really need to look at Rodriguez. So that's how running back is kind of looking. Normally, like I said, we're not really stashing wide receivers, and normally wide receivers pretty thin. But we've actually had a few injuries this week, and some wide receivers we definitely should go over. First up is the Christian Watson injury. Hurt his hamstring again. Don't know the severity yet. Like, there's a chance that he plays this week. There's a chance that he's like done for the season. Like, I don't think he's done for the season or anything. But point is, very wide range of outcomes for how much time he's going to miss, especially because, you know, he's got a history even this season with this hamstring injury. And so whenever someone has like recurring hamstring injuries, you want to be a little bit more cautious, especially because, and it's kind of like double-edged here, it's like they're in the playoff hunt, right? So it's like, if they think they can make the playoffs, they obviously want Watson healthy for the playoffs, but they have to get there. And they're right on like the edge right now, like definitely in contention. And so they also kind of need Watson to help them get into the playoffs. So a weird dynamic there. But again, I don't know if he's going to play this week, but there's a chance that he doesn't. And if we project him out, then Jaden Reed ranks 27th among wide receivers. Romeo Doubs ranks 31st. So both of them would be, you know, low end 2s, maybe wide receiver 3 plays, maybe flex spot, second flex spot. Like, they'd be players who you could legitimately start this week and use to get into the fantasy playoffs. And so they should absolutely be rostered. My guess would be that Watson doesn't play this week, but again, it's just a guess. We'll have to see this week. Behind those two, you've got Noah Brown, comes off the knee injury last week, doesn't have a good game. Basically, Nico Collins just dominates the entire target share, has an eruption game, nearly 200 receiving yards. I think it was 191 yards on 9 catches. Normally, it's not going to be him getting virtually everything and then everyone else getting nothing. It was just a really good game from him. And then, of course, we have Tank Dell done for the season. He's not going to be playing anymore. So Brown's going to see the field a lot, and you think getting healthier off this knee injury as well. Week 14 matchup, though, trash. Playing against the Jets, we're not playing Noah Brown. So if you're looking for someone to pick up and add and play this week, do not add Noah Brown. You're not going to be able to use him. But they play the Titans in week 15 and week 17, both smash spots. There is a chance, like let's say Noah Brown, has this increased snap share this week, commands a decent target share against the Jets. There's a chance he's like a fringe option in weeks 15 and 17. So because of that possibility, definitely good to put on your bench. Behind him, I would say it's Jonathan Mingo. He's someone that I really liked as a prospect coming into the season. Had a very difficult start to the year. Obviously, the entire offense did as well, but it was really Adam Thielen just dominating the target share early in the year. But he's playing virtually every snap now. He's got 7, 6, 6, and 10 targets over the last month, and that's compared to 10, 11, 3, and 6 from Adam Thielen. So Jonathan Mingo's out-targeted Adam Thielen 16-9 over the last 2 weeks, and I don't know if that exact split's going to continue. I don't know that he's going to out-target Thielen, but I expect the volume to be there rest of season for Jonathan Mingo. I just think, young team, obviously rookie quarterback, rookie wide receiver, they want to see what they have, not only in Bryce Young, but in Mingo. They spent, a second-round pick to get him. They were very high on him in the draft process. They want to see what they have. They want to develop the chemistry between him and Bryce Young. So, and they're not obviously worried about winning games right now, right? They're in last place. So I think he's going to play a ton continuing the rest of the season. I think they're going to design looks to him. Do I think you're starting him in, say, like a 10-team league with 2 wide receiver spots and 1 flex spot? Probably not. I mean, I'd be pretty surprised if you were, and it definitely have to be full PPR if you were doing that. But many of you play in, let's say, 3 wide receiver 12-team leagues. You play in leagues that have only 2 wide receiver spots, but 2 or 3 flex spots. In those formats, and especially in full PPR, I definitely think he should be rostered and could be someone we're starting down the stretch. I will say as well, want to emphasize the full PPR portion. I think he now has the most receptions of any wide receiver without a touchdown this season. Obviously, he can rack up, 6, 7 receptions, but like the touchdown upside is so minimal that, in standard half PPR formats, he's a much worse play. Behind Mingo, you've got Elijah Moore. It is truly wild, like his splits with and without Joe Flacco. We knew them going into the week, and then, he comes out, has 12 targets, has the most air yards of any player all season in a game. He had nearly 300 air yards. Obviously, they were many of them just like uncatchable. Like they were chucking the ball 50 yards downfield and he wasn't going to come down with it. But if you have 300 air yards, you have a lot of upside in that game. He definitely benefited from Amari Cooper leaving the game with a concussion. But a lot of times people who have a concussion miss the next game. And so we might see this next week where Elijah Moore is legitimately like a flex option, a wide receiver 3 play. So has to be rostered everywhere because of that upside. And then finally, Demario Douglas, fringe option because I don't actually know if he's going to play this week. It hurts him that they play on Thursday night. He had the concussion last week, couldn't play, or I guess 2 weeks ago, then couldn't play last week. Still, as of recording this, don't know yet the status for Tuesday and on Monday. He didn't practice. So if he doesn't practice again with concussion on Tuesday, my guess is they hold him out because, again, I don't see why they would rush him back when, again, they're not trying to win games right now. But if he were cleared, if he did play on Thursday night, he'd be very easily the Patriots' top target. He would grade out as roughly a flex option. Again, better in full PPR formats. So a lot to like, I would say. At wide receiver this week, there are options where they could be on free agency and they might be starting for you this week, even without a ton of buys. But again, I want to reiterate, if you're looking for someone to stash, you look at this list and you're like, oh, maybe I'll add them, but I'm never going to play them. If you're never going to play them, if they're your 6th or 7th best wide receiver, running back, lean running back, see if you can hit on a high upside handcuff, because when that hits, that could propel you to a championship. I don't know that Demario Douglas really has the upside to propel you to a championship. At tight end, you've got Isaiah Likely, Brevin Jordan, Zach Ertz, and Chig Okonkwo. I would imagine Likely's already rostered, but if not, he's a top option. Add him. Other 3 are definitely more likely to be on free agency. Brevin Jordan is a great athlete. We saw that play out in last week's game. With Tank Dell missing the rest of the season, with Dalton Schultz injured right now, he has the potential to have a really good target share on what is a well above average passing offense. He needs Schultz to be out, though. So I do think there's a world where Schultz is healthy enough to plays, and it's more of like a 50-50 or 60-40 split between Schultz and Brevin Jordan. My guess is it would be closer to 60-40 in Schultz's favor. But even if it were 50-50, you really can't start tight ends who, are getting 50% of tight end workload, because that's 4 targets. That's just not worth starting unless one of them is heavily featured in the red zone. And so you're going to need Schultz out. I don't really know how long Schultz is going to be out, but that's one where I don't think you need to put a claim in for Brevin Jordan, right? So if, we get later into the week, Schultz gets declared out, you need that tight end option, then I'd go in and add him. I wouldn't really spend a bunch of fab to get Brevin Jordan right now. Then with Ertz, he's healthy right now. He wants to join a contender. My guess is that we will not be starting him. I don't even know if he'll join a team really before the end of the fantasy playoffs. It really might be he joins a team right before playoffs happen and isn't really involved in the offense until the playoffs. But there is a possibility that in the very near future, he joins a contender. Maybe in the last few weeks of the season, he is their starting tight end or something like that, and we're using him. That's more of you've got a luxury bench, right? You've got 10 bench spots. You have the luxury of being I have 3 or 4 that pure upside, and you want to throw Zach Ertz on there. Sure, not someone obviously you're starting right now because he's not currently on a team. And then Chig Okonkwo, that's a desperation ad. That is, you're in a deeper format. You have had injuries at tight ends. You have nothing that you trust at the tight end position. You can go to Chig. I don't love it, but again, been more involved recently. He is talented. He's someone that the talent I liked going into the year. He's a good receiving prospect. He's someone that does still have upside in the NFL. He just needs the volume to be there, which it hasn't been a lot. Has been more recently. So again, that's why he's on the list. Better volume recently. You can go there, but you definitely don't have to. And he's not someone where it's ooh, should I stash him? Again, stashes are for running backs right now. For quarterback streaming, you got 3 good options this week. Jake Browning versus the Colts, Gardner Minshew at the Bengals, so those 2 playing each other, and then Jordan Love at the Giants on Monday night. I lost Trevor Lawrence in a league where I have to win this week to get into the playoffs, and I have all 3 available to add. So I have this exact decision to make. Right now I'm going after Jake Browning, but I'm not going to be upset if I put a claim in, someone else gets Browning, I end up with Minshew or Jordan Love. So I wouldn't go spending 100% of your fab to get any one of the 3. And I definitely don't care enough to where, like, I think they're projected by like 0.4 points difference between first and last. And I do have it right now as Browning, Minshew, and then Love, assuming in my projections right now, I'm assuming that Christian Watson is out. Love could jump to first if Watson is playing. But again, I don't care that much about the order. I would do personal preference. If you have a gut feeling, you're like, no, Nick, Jordan Love's playing great. He's got an easy matchup. I think that he's a top guy. Add him, play him. I think it's close enough between all of them. I would just say I'm right now assuming that Christian Watson is not going to play, and I'm pretty sure the Packers are going to win that game. And so we could see lower pass attempts from Love, and then also if Watson's not on the field, just a little bit lower upside for the passing offense. So that's why I'm leaning towards the other two. And when deciding between Minshew and Browning is who my gut is saying, just because he's got the better skill players around him. He'll be at home, and he does have the slightly better matchup. So again, my lean is Browning, then Minshew, then Love, but add them whatever order you want. Then finally, defense streaming options. Number one is the Saints at home versus the Panthers. Panthers have allowed the 5th most points per game to opposing defenses in fantasy. They're at home in the Superdome. Like, obviously, we've got a lot of upside here for them. They obviously play a lot better at home. Bryce Young could easily fall apart in this game. Number two is Packers at the Giants. The Giants are coming off bye, which does typically help offenses a little bit, at least early on in the game. But they have allowed the most points per game to opposing defenses. They will have a backup quarterback, and it's Monday night. It is always nice having a player on Monday night. I think there's 2 Monday night games actually this week, but he is in one of those games. It's just nice having a player there because you just got that hammer. You have a little bit of hope. Even if you're down 20 points, you've got that defense, right? They're facing the Giants. They could get a pick six and save things for you. So definitely a good option there. Obviously, that's not really the deciding factor between them, but Packers still good defense. Giants, obviously bad offense. Then number three, Raiders versus the Vikings. Jefferson will be back, so if you want to kind of lean away from this one, that is fine. And Doubs really only has one bad game. Like, he could easily go back to looking really, really good and just destroy the Raiders, but he could also look like he did last week. Raiders fully capable of racking up sacks in this spot, and so upside defense there. But I would say like a lot more variance for the Raiders. And then fourth best streaming option is the Texans at the Jets. Jets have allowed the 2nd most points per game to opposing defenses, and the Texans have definitely underperformed as a whole this season on defense, not on offense obviously, but on defense. But they've played a lot better as of late, and the Jets quarterback situation is so bad. They're even talking about potentially bringing Zach Wilson back or starting him again. Their quarterback situation is so bad that even a league average defense, I'm perfectly happy streaming them against them. So that's a look at the Week 14 waiver wire. I'll be back on Thursday to break down every single game, talk about the players I'd be starting and sitting this week, and then Friday this week to go over my favorite underdog picks. That, my friends, is in this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button, and how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.